I'm Jo Tan, a presenter, writer, and actress. As a Singaporean, I've seen how far our country has come, with its progress built on the painstaking contributions of countless individuals. And some of them weren't even born in Singapore. So I set out to discover who are some of these immigrants whose contributions have impacted us in ways we might not even realize. What are their achievements? And why have they dedicated their lives to this country they now call home? Today, I'd like you to meet Michael Gray.
Right circle, left circle, right rainbow, left rainbow.
Singapore today is on the way to becoming a more inclusive society. But there was a time when those with disabilities were completely marginalized by society.
Would that be right?
In the 1980s, that began to change as voices began speaking up for disability rights. One of those voices belonged to this man whose name I'd never heard of before. Michael Gray helped to lay the foundations for today's social service sector and quietly volunteered behind the scenes with some of Singapore's most well-known social service organizations, including one in Ang Mo Kio, where I live. So I'm curious to know, just who is this man who's been serving my neighborhood for 35 years?
Hi, Mr. Gray. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Joe. Please call me Mike.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mike.
Welcome to our little apartment.
Thank you very much. So, Mike, I have to say that I am so impressed by all your accomplishments over the years. You have been volunteering with social service for over 40 years now. How did you find the sheer number of hours in a day that you needed to do all that? I mean, hold down a full-time job, support your family, spend time with them, and of course, give so much of your time to different types of charitable causes as well.
Maybe I don't spend enough time at home in those days, but still, yeah, I think I'm pretty good at planning my time. But I like the challenge and the people I had to work with.
Did you realize that this was what you were going to go into, or what were you interested in?
I think as a young person, I was more interested in boating. I'm not that bright educationally. I always had to work very hard to get anywhere. And the headmaster thought I wasn't going to pass my O-levels, so he said, "Gray, I think you should go and get a job." So I did. I became a seafarer at the age of 16.
And then you did a total about turn because you went from seafaring to accounting.
There's only one person I could blame, and that was my wife, Linda. When I was doing my maritime degree, I got invited to Chinese New Year party. And then I met her. I realised she didn't have a boyfriend.
Not yet.
Not yet. So that's how we met.
You met your wife and you decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to change careers.
I'm going to change career. I'll try being an accountant because I'm a person that likes doing sort of planning and figures and things like that.
How much were you billing per hour as a chartered accountant?
Oh, I have no idea now.
Yeah?
It's expensive, of course, employing accountants here.
At the same time, your whole life, you have been learning new things and jumping into new things. So what took you all the way to Asia?
We wanted to go to Malaysia initially, but I couldn't get a job in Malaysia. So in 1978, we came to Singapore.
And then you started volunteering to be part of the social services sector in Singapore. How did that come about?
I started sort of through accounting, actually. The community chest needed accountants to look through the budgets and approve the budgets for the community chest members. I'm not good at fundraising. I'm not the person that can persuade people to give money. That's not my character. I don't know.
But that's fine because when the money comes in, then you're the one who allocates the... Yes, you use it. You allocate the budgets, you manage the budgets, you make sure that they're under control, and that's so important.
All my charity work is done outside office hours. So it's my own time, which has a zero chargeable hours, my own time. So it's my own time.
Does your wife agree with that?
It does eat into the family time a bit, of course. But then rather than lounging around doing nothing, no, some people come home and just sit there and watch TV all night, that's it. No, but if you want to do things, it's a matter of just planning.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting because I think when people think about volunteering for charity, they think a lot about being on the ground, but they forget that actually you need to keep the organizations up and running as well, and that takes real skills.
That's how I got co-opted to the Singapore Council of Social Service. to help set up the training for them.
You were also roped in to help with disability services in Singapore. So how did that happen?
I was sitting at the board meeting, minding my own business, and the chairman, Dr. Ee Peng Lang, a really super guy, he said the government wants to move disability from the ministry to the Singapore Council of Social Service, and that they would be setting up a committee. And he looked at me, Mike will chair it. Oh, I said, Dr. E, I've never seen a disabled person in my life. I don't know what it means. He said, you've got 1 month to learn, then you will hold your first meeting. We eventually got together a committee. We did our own internal report and we put together a disability plan. And then I had to do presentations to the Advisory Council, chaired by Tony Tan. Advisory Council, opportunities for the disabled.
So it's the report of the Advisory Council on the Disabled. What was significant in this report that led to different types of changes in Singapore?
I think it was a major milestone in changing disability in Singapore, that report. There were many changes on all areas of disability. Things like accessibility, so that people who are in wheelchairs could get up and down. Special schools were very much outside, and they managed to bring disabled children into the school system and made schools accessible. I even remember writing Singapore Airlines to say, well, why haven't you got disabled toilets on your airplanes? And they actually did it later. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The most satisfying one was, to me, Sunday, a centre for the intellectually disabled in HDB Estate. Something that the ministry said it won't work, but it's something that should be done. So I said, okay, let me try and do it.
Residents thought the idea was very good, but they said that we think we should be in the area, but in somebody else's block, and nobody wants it in their own block. And
I was quite shocked about the reaction of the average person here for intellectually disabled people. Seemed to be shied away, and also the families didn't want to take the intellectually disabled children or adults into the community. So it's really good to get more of integration into the community.
I see. And also later in 1998, you were asked to help at the Ang Mo Kio Family Service Centre. How did that come about?
That was purely Dr. Vasu to blame for that. He said, you are an Ang Mo. Well, that's your hometown. Ang Mo should go to Ang Mo Kio. Oh, so I said, okay, Vasu, okay. And I knew nothing about social service. I went in there completely blur, you know, and so I had to learn again. That was really the first real family service centre.
Up next, Michael and I take a trip down memory lane to some of his old haunts. Michael Gray, a Brit who arrived in Singapore in 1978, spent 40 years volunteering in social service. He played a role in Singapore's push for accessibility for the disabled and soon turned his attention to the vulnerable who were struggling in the community.
I really did not know until that time that there were people in need in Singapore. That there are people, maybe 10%, living in quite poor conditions. It was an eye-opener. We had the really good social workers who taught me. Yeah, I learnt a lot. I really learnt a lot. We organised a programme to train grassroots workers. They would visit all the HDB blocks to see where people had problems. Because there were people who would be in a flat having a problem, but nobody knew they were there.
What kind of problems were these?
They had hardly any food. There was one case when the whole apartment, the whole wall was full of cockroaches. No, some of these people, they don't know the services are available. So
To help them.
to help them, yeah.
And from then on, you also got involved with PAVE.
PAVE is the brainchild of Sudanao. She identified there was an issue of family violence in the community which was not being dealt with properly. After a while, the government told us, said, look, you're serving the whole of Singapore. So we actually move it out of the Ang Mo Kio Family Service Centres into a separate organisation. And then it developed from that.
So, Michael, you've worked for 16 years with NCSS. You have held so many different positions over the years. I'm going to read them out to you. Board member, Vice President, Member of EXCO, Deputy Chairman of NCSS Services Committee, Chairman, NCSS Youth and Children Committee, Disabled Services Committee, NCSS Volunteer Circle, Social Service Institute, and so on and so forth. What would you say was your favourite work with the NCSS?
I think the early days were my favourite time. We were a very small group, very close group of people, developing the programs and working with the various agencies that were members of NCSS.
You were giving so many of your hours free to charity. How did you justify that? I mean, why did you do it?
I think there's two things really. I owe Singapore a lot. I thought maybe I could give back a bit. But on top of that, everything I did, I learned something, you know. I learned things I would never have learned if I hadn't done them. And I really am very grateful for everything here.
To understand more, I seek out a long-time comrade in arms of his.
Hello.
Hi,
Welcome
Dr.
to
Nadia.
Peel.
Hello,
Nice
thank
to
you
meet
so much. So lovely to meet you. I'm so excited to see the space.
Yes, come in, come in.
How long have you known him?
35 years.
35 years?
Yeah.
And you still call him Mr. Gray?
Yes.
So why is that the case?
Reverence, I think. And Mr. Gray is somebody I respect.
Has your impression of him changed?
He's a very authentic person, you know, and I think that has never changed. I really appreciated the way he managed the management committee. I've heard of agencies where there is micromanaging. He has never done that. This was one of the few organizations where there's tremendous respect between the management and the professional staff.
Why do you think that he has invested so much of himself, especially since at certain points of these times, he wasn't even Singaporean yet?
I've often wondered, why would someone do that? You know, if not for the fact that they believed in contributing back to Singapore and to the people, you know, and specifically to the cause, I would think. By the time I asked him, he was already a citizen. so he proudly says that he's Singaporean. But I think as he got more invested in the various causes that he saw taking place in the community, I think that probably stirred something in him where he really wanted to give back. And not just in his own area of expertise, but also in other areas. You know, I think it's in his DNA that he doesn't want to take credit. He does things very quietly, you know, in something that interests him and attracts him, he puts in his soul to do a good job of it. It's very interesting to me, now when I think back on those days, we talk about corporate social responsibility now. He was practicing it then.
I understand that we are very fortunate today because actually you don't like giving interviews and you're only doing this because of Michael.
Yes.
That you call Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Why would you give that up because of Michael?
I think he has not been appreciated as much as I would have hoped, that his story needs to be told. I actually told him, Mr. Gray, I just want you to know that I'm doing this only for you and no one else, okay?
I meet up with Michael again to visit a day centre for the intellectually disabled that he set up in 1990, Sundak.
When the first one opened in Chai Chee, the residents got to understand more about intellectual disability. Having a centre come into the HDB estate, the people around understanding more has been fantastic, and the residents do volunteer.
They volunteer? That's a huge change from back when you started it. Happy New Year! Happy New Year!
One last time. Hello, hello, close and up. Scoop it down and cross.
Seeing these differently abled persons so happy in this sanctuary, I begin to understand Michael's motivation.
Okay, are you ready?
How do you feel seeing something like this?
I think it's great, actually. Really great. You know, just to imagine 34 years ago, most of these people will be sitting at home.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Very good.
Next, we visit the National Council of Social Service, where he spent 16 years volunteering.
So Mike, what is it like being back at the National Council of Social Service?
Oh, it brings back very much, many fond memories.
Yeah, you haven't
going
been here
back
for
10 or 15 years since I retired. Yeah.
So this is all talking about the chronology of NCSS, and I want to talk about your involvement in this wall of milestones as well.
Those days, the Singapore Council of Social Service had very few staff.
Oh,
so
yes.
the volunteers had to be very hands-on.
How many volunteers were there?
I think we had 6 of us or 8, somewhere like 6 or 8. I think it was four committees and 2 in each.
Right, I see. In fact, I understand that your family was involved in some of these NCSS initiatives like charity?
Yes, my wife, she helped design the charity elephant. I think she put the hair on, but originally didn't have any hair. She helped with a couple other people.
Charity is definitely still around.
Charity's still around.
So a team helped to design charity?
Yes, she was involved with a couple of others, but she did some of the artistic changes. Yeah.
And 2008 was the last year of your involvement with NCSS?
Yes, I was the vice president. I think it was 2004 to 2008. So I thought better to step down. I'd been on the board for very many years. I think it was 16 years. Or,
Yeah, 16.
60 or maybe more, I'm not sure.
Do you feel at all that I made this?
No, I'm only a small part of it. No, yeah.
I'm going to keep asking you this question wherever we go, and one day, hopefully you might say, maybe.
No, there's so many people involved. No.
Okay.
I did many years, as you know, and I think I contributed a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Coming up, I find out why Michael feels he's more Singaporean than British. I'm spending the day with Michael Gray, whose early efforts have helped pave the way for a more inclusive Singapore. After 40 years of volunteering in social service, Michael is now mostly retired and enjoying a second career as an author. Given that he's been a lifelong Freemason, his first book is, not surprisingly, about a Freemason. Did you know that Freemasons in Singapore have a long history of contributing to charities? And during my tour of the Freemasons Hall, I discover another thing about Michael that, true to his nature, he didn't tell me about.
I see that you also have your surname, M. Gray, there under NAFA, $63,000. So did you personally contribute to the fund as well?
Our family are all artists apart from me, so that's why they wanted to support NAFA.
So that's a 5-year bursary that essentially puts them through the full term of their studies at NAFA and beyond.
It's really getting people out of the poverty trap. You know, education is the way to upgrade people in society. That's the best way to do it. I think as Freemasons are charitable, and we felt that that's a charity that we would like to contribute to. It's not the only charity that Freemasons contribute in Singapore.
Back in Michael's place, I have the pleasure of meeting his family, whom I hope can tell me more about what motivates his volunteering.
Joe, I'd like to meet Linda.
Hi.
And my 2 daughters,
Hi, Linda and Joe.
Angela and Georgina.
Hi, Georgina. Nice to meet you.
I'll leave you to speak to them, and I hope they don't tell any stories that I don't want the public to hear.
I hope they do.
See you, Mike.
So hi, Angela, Georgina. How would you describe your father to somebody if you had to summarize his 78 years of experience?
I feel like he has really good moral compass, and I think he's always strived to do what's right. So I think, I value that.
Yeah, people trust him. Yeah.
It's quite funny, you see my dad amongst everybody else, and he himself probably doesn't realize, he's the only Caucasian man out of the group.
Right.
He truly is, Singaporean to the bone.
And how is that rubbed off on the two of you as well? I know, Georgina, that when he was volunteering with different organizations, you actually helped out as well. Could you tell us a bit about that?
But to be honest, growing up, we weren't even really aware of how much he was involved in. It was only when I studied graphic design that he actually approached me and asked me to design a logo for PAVE and a brochure talking about what the services were about. My dad is that kind of person where he doesn't talk about it much, he just gets things done.
I think that also has a lot to do with my mom. And for sure, she's like the rock in the family. And without her support, I don't know how like he can sort of juggle all that.
Yeah.
So Linda, was it ever difficult at any point of time when especially you were raising children together? Did you find that there was enough family time?
I wish there's more. Yeah, to be honest, yes. He's busy, but he's happy what he's doing. So if he's happy, I mean, that's okay. That's fine.
How do you feel that the two of you complement each other?
I'm not good at all these accounting and, that kind of area, and he's good at. So, 一个文一个武.
So one
Right.
is the scholar, one is the kind of the
warrior.
martial, the warrior, and you are the scholar.
No, he's the scholar.
You are the warrior. You're the doer.
Yeah, I'm
He's
the
planner.
one holding the chanko. Yeah, to feel the rice.
So I see on the side of the boat, the name of the boat is the Bleu Sotong 2.
Yes. They always said that I'm a bleu,
Okay.
and a double bleu is a bleu sotong.
Right, right. And that's
So
you.
I'm double bleu.
So you are the Bleu Sotong.
I'm the, yeah,
Oh,
you
thank
go
you
first,
very
you go
much.
first,
Thank
yeah.
you. That's very
Yeah.
kind. Ooh.
I think I've been lucky that I could have the opportunity to do so many things that I've been able to do. I never regretted giving up my British passport. I don't think it made any difference being a British person in various organisations I worked with. I always found acceptance from Singaporeans at that time. I've been 30 years a Singaporean, and Singapore's my home. The things I've been able to do has made me really appreciate being a Singaporean.
So Daddy, what's your favourite part about boating?
When we get to the destination, put down the anchor, then I can have a drink.
Is that why I'm here?
Yes, you are the designated driver to drive us home.
Seeing Michael out at sea, I now understand that for this seafarer, it has always been about the journey. And given how much he's contributed, I'm glad his destination was Singapore.